Hey you guys, it's me, Armels, and welcome to my channel Literature Nuts. So today is our first lesson. We're gonna dive into a poem called London by William Blake. I divided this video into 5 sections. 1. Introduction of the poet, William Blake. Second, historical context, like where this poem is coming from, what motivated the author to write it. Third, summary. Fourth, poem structure. And fifth, interpretation of the text. I'm gonna share the text also, so don't you worry and let's not waste any time and let's get into it. Introduction. William Blake was born in London in 1757. He was an English poet, painter, and printmaker. Blake was a visionary artist. His work fused mysticism, imagination, and social critique. His poems are divided into two collections. One is Song of Innocence, and the second is Song of Experience. While Songs of Innocence contrasted human purity, Songs of Experience delved into the corruption of world and human nature. Blake, as a radical thinker, critiqued industrialization and political oppression as he often wrote about rebelling against the misuse of power and class. He considered himself Christian, respected the Bible, but disliked organized religion such as the Church of England. William Blake was from early romantics. He was from one of the big six of romantic era. The prominent element in his poetry is nature. William Blake wrote poem London from his own experience as he was walking by on the street, and he died in 1827. So this was the introduction of William Blake, and let's move on to the historical context of this poem. Historical context. Around the time when Blake was living in London, its population reached 3 million, which was a major cause in the emergence of industrialization. And Blake was against industrialization. The Industrial Revolution began in 1760 and marked a shift from country life to city life, brought big changes in agriculture, nature, transports, and manufacturing. After the Industrial Revolution, London's condition got worse. Because of industrial factories, terrible conditions of workers, even children were not spared, as 6 years old children were made to work in factories and dangerous places due to their small size. For 19 hours a day, London turned into a smoke ridden city, and nature was ruined completely. And since William Blake was from the early Romantics, early Romantics often wrote about the love for nature in their poetry. The poem London is a critique of human power, exposing the distance between those in power and those who are suffering, oppressors and oppressed. In this poem, Blake emphasizes that suffering is inescapable because of the misuse of power and by those in control. Summary. William Blake's poem London, published in 1794, is a powerful critique of the social and political conditions in late 18th century London. The speaker wanders through the city's streets, observing the widespread suffering and oppression of its inhabitants. The poem highlights the dehumanizing effects of industrialization, poverty, and institutional corruption, with vivid imagery of marks of weakness and marks of woe on people's faces. Well, marks of weakness and marks of woe are the words from the poem, which we will discuss in the interpretation part. Blake criticizes the exploitation enabled by institutions like the church, state, and monarchy, as seen in references to the blackening church, hapless soldier's sigh, and palace walls. These are also the words from the poem. The poem also addresses the plight of the marginalized, such as chimney sweepers and prostitutes, whose suffering is perpetuated by social neglect. Through repetitive sounds in a somber tone, Blake conveys a cycle of despair, culminating the haunting image of a blighted society where even love and marriage are tainted by disease and corruption. Now we will discuss the poem structure and then we will move on to the interpretation of the text. So, this is the text of the poem. This poem is pretty simplistic, it's easy to understand, but I'll still do the reading for you. I wander through each charted street, near where the charted themes does flow, and mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe. In every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every band, the mind forged manacles I hear. How the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. But most through midnight streets I hear how the youthful harlot's curse blasts the newborn infant's tear, and blights with plagues the marriage years. So this is the text of the poem. Now we'll move on to the poem structure. This poem is written in repetitive structure, meaning there are words that have been deliberately repeated by the poet. The same words but different meanings, or the words exclaiming their value. It is written in quatrains, which is 4 stanzas of 4 lines each. Its rhyme structure is AB, AB, meaning that the first line rhymes with the third and the second rhymes with the fourth line. Such as the first line, I wander through each charted streets, the third, and mark in every face I meet, second, with the fourth. Near where the charted themes does flow, marks of weakness, marks of woe. In every cry of every man, in every voice, in every band, in every infant's cry of fear, the mind-forged manacles I hear. You see, there's the scheme, rhyme scheme, A, B, A, B. Its repetitive rhyme structure reflecting relentless, repetitive, overflowing suffering in the city. Repetition is the key point in this poem. So it's not the repetitive rhyme and scheme, but also the repetitive words, the words that have been repeated. The words that have been repeated are charted. It's repeated twice. It's been repeated twice, and the mark 3 times and every 3 times. You can see on the text. The repetition of words and the stanza structure reflects how the life of suffering is repetitive, how it's like a never ending cycle, an inescapable fate, how this is inescapable suffering is the result of the choices of those in power, who are the only one who could do something about it, who only misuses their power and find peace in others' suffering. We can call the structure of this poem a cyclical structure because it ends right where it began, providing no solution for the problem at all. So, seen as in the 4 stanzas, first and second stanzas, focus on the people who are suffering, and the third stanza explores the causes of that suffering. Like what caused the suffering, how people in power exploited the masses from their powerful positions in the society, while in the last, fourth stanza, its focus written on the suffering of the people, highlighting the inescapable fate of those who are suffering. You can see the cycle that it's repeating. The first 2 stanzas started on the suffering, and the fourth stanza ended on the same topic, the suffering of those people who were living in London around that time. The poem's language is negative as it uses the words like marks of weakness, marks of woe, cry of every man or cry of fear, mind forged manacles, chimney sweeper's cry, hapless soldier's sigh, and youthful harlot's curse, blights with plagues. There's this overwhelmingly long list of negative words, the images of suffering that overwhelms you and reflects how overwhelmed those sufferings are. So, this is the first person perspective poem where the speaker is telling us that in the first stanza, I walk through the streets of London near the river Thames, and in the faces of everybody I meet, I see signs of weakness and unhappiness. In second stanza, he says, in every sound I hear, whether it's a cry of a man or a cry of an infant, in every voice I realized that people are trapped in every way, mentally as well as physically. In the third stanza, the poet highlights the causes of the suffering, such as industrialization, church, monarchy, landowners, and the government, which we will discuss truly in later this video. In the fourth stanza, the poet says, "What I hear the most at night as I'm walking around is the sound of young prostitutes, swearing, cursing, and that ruins the innocence of newly born babies who overhear that swearing, those words, and it makes it bad. That something should be so pure and so good. It ruins the innocence of babies, and that should be so pure and good." Okay, so let's discuss the meaning of those repetitive words and true interpretation of this poem. In the first line, the word chartered has been repeated twice, which means we really need to think about it. The poet never repeats words unless the word has some important message, some important meaning, or if it's a satire in itself. Unfortunately, the word chartered is probably the word we don't use much, we don't have much understanding as of today. So, a little bit of context. Between 1760 and 1820, a lot of land of England, 6 million acres, was taken into private ownership, a land that was once public. Charter was a document issued by government officials that granted certain rights, like a document that stated who owned what, who owned which land. Creation of charters made profit for bankers and merchants, making the rich richer, and of course, made more struggles for the poor, in the results of them being heavily controlled. So the chartered streets means the streets, buildings that are owned by the government or the person in authority. This also wounded people like Blake, who adored nature. His early poetry was about nature as he was an early romantic, and now suddenly nature was owned. The second line, chartered Thames, is a satire in itself, as the word Thames refers to the river Thames. The river is nature, while nature can't be owned. An interesting implication of having human power and control over something natural, a river. It's a sort of a contrast between the power of nature and the power of a man, as the man would seek to charter or control the uncontrollable, such as River Thames. And mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe. The word mark, its first use of mark, means noticing every face, memorizing, remembering. The speaker is saying that he noticed every face. Second use of this word has a different meaning as he refers marks as a sign, a plural, marks as a sign, signs of weakness and unhappiness. The poet is saying that he noticed every face he meets, and he noticed the signs of weakness and signs of unhappiness on their faces. The word every is the most numerous example of repetition in the poem. The mind forged manacles is implying the imprisonment of mind, emphasizing that people are trapped in their own minds. Manacles implies the lack of freedom and that these manacles are forged. This concept is a little complicated to understand. This poet is trying to say that the people were trapped mentally as well as physically, people were bound and helpless, and these mind forged manacles came from the ideas and outlook imposed on us, forced onto us by an external authority, by the power, by the people in power who abuses the people who are suffering. These people were manacled by the external authorities' ideas and ideologies and their rules and restrictions. The hapless soldier's sigh, or blood was running down palace walls, refers to the French Revolution that turned into bloodshed and chaos. While the line blood was running down palace walls can also be direct blame to monarchy for the consequences of the French Revolution massacre. In this stanza, Blake is indicating the increasing distress and happiness of the British soldiers that could pave the way for another revolution, could lead to similar uprising if it causes continue to be ignored. The poet basically blamed monarchy, church, government, and rich landowners for the poor's suffering and warned them of the consequences of their decisions if they don't stop exploiting the masses, if they don't stop misuse their power. The another revolution will certainly take place. In the last stanza, the speaker is wandering on Midnight Street at the time of midnight, where he hears the harlots, means young prostitutes, cursing, swearing, and newborn babies also hear those words which tear the innocence of the infant. The final line, blights with plagues, the marriage hears. This line has a strong meaning. Like, while marriage is a symbol of new beginnings, here's is a symbol of death. Blake uses this image to show that marriage, even though symbolizes the new beginnings, is undermined, stifled by the pervasive evil he observes in London City. This last line symbolizes the corruption and destruction of societal institutions, especially marriage, by the evils and suffering plaguing the city. Though marriage, poet represents hope. Through marriage, poet represents hope, fresh start, and the promise of a better life with family, while plagues is representing the suffering, disease, and despair that are widespread in London. The phrase suggests that these negative forces ultimately destroy the ideas and promises of any positive hope, turning the symbol of hope into one of death and decay. It's a negative image that what was so good, the old London, is now destined to be destroyed. Powerful ending to a challenging poem which criticizes those in positions of power. I analyzed this poem as best as I could, and I hope this video helped you get the best understanding of this poem. Break a leg if this topic comes in your exams. Thank you so much for watching this video. Leave a like and comment if you liked this lesson, and also subscribe to my channel and ring a bell icon to get the first updates on new interesting literature lessons. Have a nice day.